Hey everybody, Brian here from quantlabs.net. Okay, so you're going to be reading this title, excuse me, reading this title as here are my fave but important machine language resources. Just no different than Python. It took me a while to come around. This is not my top priority as we speak, but it will help out on my, I guess you could call it a shift or different direction I wanted to go with. I think machine learning is pretty well taken over everything in terms of software development, and specifically in uh, trading, specifically around algorithms and automated trading. And it just seems more and more I look at things, you can't really escape it. So I finally figured out watching this video here from this Bert Mueller on Chat with Traders kind of convinced me and really opened my eyes on the true benefit and the right kind of applications you get with machine learning. Now, I want to stress that I would not put machine learning to learn price action in itself. I'm not sure if that can be, I'm sure it can be used, but it's a combination of probably in the dozens of indicators and models that run in parallel with a complex array of rules and whatnot to set conditions and triggers and signals on when to enter into positions, and the timing of them, and the magnitude of when to close them out. I do think that there is a lot of potential here. Uh, so I thought, you know what, I'm going to start looking at from a high level on the basically on the high level, just to try to understand what's the best approach, because it is overwhelming. The other thing is I want to make sure everybody understands I'm nowhere close to being an expert. I wouldn't even consider myself anywhere at that level. But from an architecture standpoint, I just wanted to let you know what I'm using as my so-called here fave resources to make these decisions. All right, so let's rewind a little bit back a year ago, let's say 6 months ago. If you go to my YouTube channel, you'll notice how I've raved about Apple technology. Here, where is it? Under Apple. Okay, right here. Now, it doesn't mean that Apple sucks. Far from it. But I'll get into that in a minute. But when I went through some of these videos, I've been watching how do you apply machine learning with Python. There's many different approaches, but at the end of the day, I came across three major libraries. Well, actually four, but I'll just talk about three at a high level. Fortunately, I have some really smart people in my community that I correspond with quite a bit. Out of those people, I started noticing a trend that they were focusing on two libraries for machine learning from both Google and open source, and that's one of the critical decisions here for me to talk about this is they're open source. So you have Keras, which is I don't know if even like I'm so kind of new to it. I'm hoping I got the pronunciation right, but it doesn't matter. This is just more for numbskulls like me to start learning this stuff and trying to understand it. So when you look for something called Keras, this machine learning library is open source. It was developed by some independent guy. Well, it's a guy works at Google, and basically it's a Python machine learning library, fairly advanced. Now I learned this stuff through Sendex, that channel I've talked about. I think I've done a video on this guy. It's an amazing channel if you want to learn about Python algorithmic trading. So this is where I started, and this is the guy Sendex, but you'll see here is probably his most popular video is the machine learning tutorial, and it's really basic. And he starts with Scikit, the package, and then he moves into, I believe it was Keras, which is a fairly easy library to work with. And what I'm finding is that Keras is easy. I haven't really coded with it, but that's what I'm understanding it is. So there's that. And then the other big library is it's like the big gorilla in the room, again from Google, open source TensorFlow. And this is the most popular one. So again, open source, written in C, has Python bindings, and most people will work with a Python. So the difference between the Keras is I believe it's 100% Python. So it's not really recommended for heavy production use, meaning, I don't know, let's say millions of users. What I'll show you the resource, one of the resources said that you may get up to comfortably with up to 4 concurrent users, and that's not bad. But let's say you want to build out some kind of application for mass distribution to be put up in the cloud, you definitely want to use TensorFlow because it's written in C++ at the back end, and there's Python bindings to hook into it. So because it's written in C++, it has probably better performance, and basically it's just, like I said, the gorilla of the room. And then the last one that I've looked more into is Torch. And the reason I like Torch is because Facebook uses it with the Lua. You might have seen that. If you are interested in that, what I would recommend is just to do a search on Lua as an example. See here, use Redis for NoSQL, Lua for trading logic with Redis, and so on and so forth. Okay, so you can look for that, and then you'll also see Torch. I've tried. Now, my original idea of using both Torch and Redis within a Redis module for Redis 4, I've confirmed will not work. I guess the way they've architected Redis, so that throws that out the window. So because of that, Torch isn't as attractive to me right now. But from what I understand, Torch is really, it is a fairly fast library because it's very small versus TensorFlow. So from my way I look at it, I'm going to really work with TensorFlow because it's the big, as I said, the big gorilla, and it's something worth pursuing. And then if down the line I decide, well, I'll move over to something like Torch or something, maybe. And the other thing is, don't forget with Redis, you'll get the neural net function, that module for Redis 4. So I've done those video or topics on my blog. Let me just go there and show you what I mean. But I still want to use Redis on the back end, just because of how it's architected. We got somebody sent over a JAX survey for 2016, 2017, and Redis year over year was the only database that grew. All the other database, including NoSQL, including the traditional SQL databases, have shrunk in size because of all these other big projects like Spark and whatnot, and all these other new up and coming libraries. All these libraries are competing against each other, but the only one out of the traditional databases, including NoSQL, Redis was the only one that grew. So again, it seems to be leader of the pack, and it's a good choice. So once again here, if you do a search on my blog for Redis, you will find some articles and resources available to understand. Actually, maybe a better search keyword is neural net. I do talk about this. This is very interesting. Here we go. Here we go. This article here. So maybe not, but if you go to Google and just look up Redis neural network, you'll find on GitHub some examples of how to use the neural net module built in for Redis. I think it's very genius in how it's architected with the module new feature for Redis 4. Anyways, that's part of the Redis. So I have looked at, can you integrate TensorFlow and Redis together, and the answer is hopefully yes, because there is a project out there for TensorFlow. So if I look up TensorFlow with Redis, there's a module here on GitHub that somebody's been working on with the Redis and TensorFlow integration. Now, hopefully this project will not get abandoned, but it's a pretty good little project to get you started. Not only that, but the guys over at Redis Labs are really smart on, building out platforms using Redis Labs with real time, using Spark as well as a TensorFlow and Redis. So other areas to look at. So these are things that I want to look at, because Redis is like literally, outside of writing your own highly optimized database in memory, I think Redis is your best option. And for me, I just don't want to go down the path of writing my own in-memory database. I think for me, as a one-man show, that'd be kind of suicidal on the time front, maintenance front. So these are all the options that we've got available. So in TensorFlow is definitely, for now, the pick that I'm going with. But here's the important thing, as I said, that impacts iOS. Okay, so let's take a look at the one resource I really, really like. Now, here I've put up the article, but you'll notice this guy, he seems to be, I'll call him the Khan Academy Machine Learning. His name's Suraj. This guy's amazing. I've learned a lot from him. He
you need a website.
Is a big-time mobile developer going the path of machine learning. And he covers here how to deploy a TensorFlow model to production, all done in Python, and that is very cool. You can tell that he's really popular just based upon the number of subscribers he has on his channel. Suraj Raval, 125,000. So he's doing all right. He's quite good, actually. So there's this, how to deploy a TensorFlow model to production. Now, if you go onto YouTube here and do how to do one for Keras, you will find that. But he does talk about the differences between the two. And you may want to check out these videos if you want to understand Keras as well. Sorry about the mispronunciation if that's the case. So the other big one that really, really sold me on this was, you have machine learning, but how do you deploy it into, let's say, iOS apps? How do you deploy it? Well, you obviously have to want to use probably Swift, and how do you integrate, and blah, 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 new language, and blah, blah, blah. It just gets really complicated. And when I saw this, there's this video that will show you how to take what you develop in TensorFlow in Python using Java integration for the Android, as well as integrating it with C++, with the protobuf, which is a library that serializes all the data so everything can communicate with each other. You can deploy it, I won't say easily, onto Android, but it seems to be a lot easier than doing it through iOS using, let's say, Swift. So this is the big reason why I'm kind of making that shift into looking at Android. So that's that. Now the other thing is, I won't say it's an easy migration process or integration process, But as I said, it can be done, and this video did highlight that. So, anyways, if there's a problem, you can always find it on YouTube. Okay, so knowing that, what else was I gonna say? Yes, so we've talked about this video to get you started, this video for Android, this video for the live production, and yeah, oh, I forgot to mention, in this one video regarding the Android, at the end of that video, he does talk about how if you compare Siri, the obviously the assistant, voice assistant, or voice activated assistant that's driven by quote unquote AI, that's Apple. It's not open source, so he questions the credibility of it because it's not open source. Is it done right? Is the machine learning done right? So he questions it. Doesn't mean it's right or wrong. He just questions it, and he talks about the lack of credibility from Apple because of that. Whereas TensorFlow is open source, and as a result, the TensorFlow is more open and is more going to have higher standards set as part of the TensorFlow community grows. Now, the other thing that I want to highlight here that I've kind of alluded to at the beginning is if you go into my blog, you should be able to find a article. It's not up. Okay, but I will have an article on charting, and obviously that will be an important article as well. But let me just show you some search results that I found. So as we all know, the charting, so we'll just call it stock charting. Now remember, Android is Java, and that's going to be in, as I said, Java. There is some open source stuff, but I did do some research. Went to best library, blah 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 blah, and the one that there's SideChart, which I like. Let me just pull up another one. Easiest way to display stock graph. Okay, so there's this question came up. You have a few options: a chart engine, SideChart. I've not looked at this AP, a chart engine, but you know, obviously you want to stick with preferably open source. But if I'm not mistaken, one of the standard ones is MP, the Android chart. So here, you know, as an example, and there's quite a few decent financial chart demos. The ones that I've seen include Candlestick here. Simple stuff, nothing exciting. There's also just give me a second here. There is also MP Android chart. This seems to be the granddaddy of them all. And actually, I was just doing a demo. Okay, this is this Candlestick. And then, okay, so we have the Android chart. I can't remember which one it was, but there's just a standard price line. I don't know. I'll find it. It was not bad. It was similar to, maybe it was just Phil J. I can't remember. Let's just do a gallery. Maybe how to use iOS charts. No. Let me just see our stock. Anyways, I'm gonna leave it, but I just want to show you the direction I'm planning to go. But I will say Android's obviously a lot more mature than the iOS charting, specifically related around iOS. So a couple of more advantages, which I guess obviously I've priced out Android tablets, Samsung, Lenovo, fairly cheap for decent size, like $300, versus let's say a higher end iPad, which will run you 1,000 plus. And yeah, the security is a problem, but I can figure that out. Also, the other big advantage is I'm finding that there's maturity behind the Android product because it's been out a lot longer, but iOS or Swift is a fairly newer language, so it won't be as mature, so you won't find the charting as good. So this is the stuff I'm looking at. Hopefully this will help you out, and let me know what you think in the comments. Talk to you later.